that thing, how they got the boat launched, I definitely want to get into that, Dean. That was
Oh,
wild.
dude.
I've seen that before, but not a boat that big. That was about 26, 28.
It wasn't 28. It may have been the 26 range.
Yeah.
But I wish I could. When we were launching, you couldn't get video of, because you had to sit down and hold your ass on. But to video it from the sand would have been cool.
I've actually seen that done before with smaller boats, but man, those guys knew what they were doing.
We'll
get into it. We'll get into it.
Do or die.
You guys have anything in particular? I know you want. I'm going to talk tarpon. I put that on there. Scott, you were out there. Was it yesterday or today, or both?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
And kind of what the thought process. So I got fishing trips starting Thursday. We can talk about how do you figure it out after you've been gone? Where do you
That's
start?
Exactly what that's going to be the second part. When I right in there, after I say what could we learn from some, elsewhere, because I always get a kick out of that. Like whenever I've traveled and fished elsewhere, you're like, oh, that's how they do that here, that kind of stuff. So
I could have taught those dudes a few things. Fishing was not their main game.
Oh, is that right? You should have. All right. Well, we'll get started here, and then we'll talk about all that. Let's not leave. Let's leave it for our fine listeners here. All right, here we go. Never thought I would miss those mugs across from me, but look at those two guys right there. Captain Dean Thomas, Captain Scott Knoll. Don't tell them, well, they're listening. Don't tell them I miss them. But that was cool, man. You guys had some adventures. We're going to get into that. This is the Bite Me podcast. I'm John Lopez. That is Captain Dean Thomas. That is Captain Scott Knoll. And Captain Caleb McCumber, somewhere in Louisiana, probably going to check in with a little cameo here. And that's not his fault. I told him. I know he's doing some scouting for a big tournament. I said, you just take your time, do what you need to do, because he had a long day yesterday, and pop in if you can. Before we get started, and there's a lot of adventures to cover here from Dean and Scott. Before we get started, let's make sure we get everybody. You got a lot of new listeners this week. I don't know if you noticed, Scott, but we had maybe 100 new subscribers joining the podcast. And so if you're new to us, don't forget to join the group page. The group page is always available on Facebook. Bite Me Fishing. You can search that. Bite Me Podcast. Search that. And then subscribe to the podcast as you see fit, wherever you get your podcast. And we are live every Tuesday at 3:30-ish to record that week's podcast. But let's get into it, man. I don't even know where to start other than we've got the podcast at all points, all corners of the world. They're coming back from Alaska, and Nicaragua and Homa, Louisiana. So we'll see what we can't forget Homa.
That's pretty. That's as diverse as it gets, man.
That's about as diverse as you get.
Everybody kept talking about how dangerous it was for me to go with the Bears and Dean to go to Nicaragua. I think Caleb's in more danger.
I think you're right.
South Louisiana.
And I think there's a big.
That's in his own backyard.
I also think there's a bigger. I also think there's a bigger language barrier. With Homa,
could be.
It might be hard. Yeah. No hablo Cajun. No hablo. So, hey, I could start with either of you guys. I'm gonna start with Scott just because that's the first name that popped in my mind. But you had a big adventure. Now lay out what you did, and I thought it was pretty dang cool, man. I know some of those pictures. I was a little bit unnerved with the bear and everybody carrying their equipment right in front of the bear, and I was like, yeah, I don't know about that far, if I'd go that far, but take us through what you did, and then we'll follow up.
I got on a plane. I left here at like 2 a.m. to get to the airport in Houston to get on a plane at 6 a.m. By that evening, I was in Anchorage. That was a lot of flying, whole lot of flying.
That's a long trip.
Flew out from there to King Salmon the next day, and then we flew out from King Salmon, which is not much. I mean, when we got there, I'm sitting there talking to one of the girls that was on the trip. This lady, she's looking around. She's like, I think we're supposed to be at the Antler Inn. And I said, yeah, that's where we're supposed to meet up. I don't know where that is. And she said, I don't either. And our phones didn't work. If you didn't have T-Mobile in King Salmon, nothing
You're
worked.
done.
And so we're both looking at each other as this van pulls up. It's got antlers in, kind of halfway written on it, I said, well, I guess that's our ride. We get in, the little teenage girl, she pulls out onto the street. She drives like, I don't know, 400 yards and turns in.
And you were there.
I get out of the van, I look back, and I was like, I can see the airport.
Oh,
a whole bunch of the guys just walked. They just walked down. But then we got on a
exactly.
plane. We got on a float plane from there. We flew out to Brooks Falls. It's a beautiful place. It's on the Brooks Lake, connects to the Naknek, or I think that's how you say it.
Yeah.
One of them Alaskan named lakes. And we're in Katmai National Park. And the Brooks Lake feeds into Naknek through this little river, and it's got some falls in it, and it is absolutely loaded up with salmon. And it's the highest concentration of coastal brown bears anywhere in the world goes to this little area right there because of all the salmon being concentrated and all the food.
Yeah.
And it was nothing to be sitting there on the side of the river and look up and count 10, 12 bears, 15 bears. There was never a time where you looked around the river and went, where'd the bears go? I mean, they were always there, always feeding. Just really cool to watch them. Something that amazed me, I thought, in my mind, bear catches a big salmon. They're 15 pounds. Bear's going to catch a salmon. He's going to walk over to the bank. He's going to sit there and have him a nice meal, and go back in and get another one. No, man. I took pictures from the second one, caught it. I was, clicking, dove in the water, caught the salmon, raised up, stripped it clean, and I looked at my pictures later. It was 11 seconds.
Damn.
I was just dumbfounded.
Yeah.
That little boy, I mean, he just cleaned that fish in a heartbeat. And then while he was finishing up eating it, he's looking around for the next one. And as soon as they finish it, they're jumping on another one. And
so do those bears migrate to that area for the salmon, or are they in that river all the time? I mean,
when the salmon show up, they show up.
They're congregated for the fishing. I mean, that's just
how about that? It's a fishing.
That's like the Port Aransas jetties.
Yeah. It was amazing to watch. It really was. Yeah. And there's boardwalks and there's overlooks and stuff for, it's kind of touristy on part of it. There's a lodge there. And we took pictures from up there, but those are snapshots, and they're looking down on the bears. You're looking down on them from up top, and wildlife never looks good when you take a picture of it down. It looks like you're in a zoo. So then we got permits to hike down to the river, and you got
that's the pictures that I saw, right?
Those are the pictures you saw. Those are the cool ones. I was literally sitting on the side of the river, sitting down on the side of the river with your feet in the water, and have bears chasing salmon in 6 inches to a foot of water, 1,000-pound bear chasing a salmon upstream and pouncing on it right in front of you. We're supposed to stay 50 yards away. And for the most part, we stay 50 yards away mostly. But hell, bears move fast. And
you don't want to go down there with any beef jerky or anything in your pockets, right? Or
oh no, that's one of the big rules. You don't bring any food of any kind, no snacks in your pockets, no nothing. Don't bring no trail mix down there. I look up and there's this one tourist dude is walking through the camp, and there's bears walking through camp. I mean, they're on the trails, and there's rangers everywhere with bear spray and stuff. And this dude is carrying an entire box of 24 Krispy Kreme donuts through camp.
Well, at least he picked well. At least he picked the right ones.
Hey, if you're gonna go down,
I stepped back and
I just look
over where the hell he brought them from. I mean, I have no idea how he got a whole box of Krispy. There was none missing.
Yeah,
a box of Krispy Kremes.
I might be going to heaven today, but I'm taking these donuts with me.
Captain Caleb is joining us now for a little. Go ahead.
I backed off and just watched him walk through camp, thinking, "Hell, a bear's fixing to jump out and eat him." I was gonna get pictures.
I got a good picture. I'll get a good picture. Oh man, Caleb's joining us now for a little cameo here. I'm guessing you're pulling your boat out of the water, Caleb.
Yeah, we're moving around. Can you hear me good?
I can hear you well enough. We were talking about all the adventures that these three captains. I've been the world traveler most of my career, and I'm the one that was stuck in Houston the whole time. We had one guy in Nicaragua, one guy in Alaska, and one guy where the language barrier is the worst, and that is Houma, Louisiana. That's you. So.
Well, me and Scott talked earlier, and he informed me that bears indeed do not poop in the woods.
Well, I saw some pictures of them doing it.
Well, it's Photoshop. Where do they poop, Scott?
Well, we were talking about this a little earlier. Bears don't poop in the woods; they poop on the trails.
On the trails,
they poop wherever they want to.
It's nice and nice
wherever
and slick.
they want to.
Nice
but
and clean.
Most of it that I saw was on the trails, and you could tell where it was because it had these little. They call them salmon berries. They're bright pink, purple-looking berries. Were just, I mean, just like glitter on top of the poop piles. But you got to walk. You got to walk careful. Yeah,
you guys jump in whenever you want because we're going to get into some fishing topics for sure. But this is great stuff. This is fascinating. We haven't even gotten to Nicaragua yet.
I want to see it. I want to see a picture of the glittery poo piles.
Yeah.
Where's that at?
No, one of the other guys took
48 megapixels.
I walked by it. And I don't know why I didn't take a picture of it. But
looks like jewelry.
What's funny is the bears. Yeah.
You could have brought Camille a necklace
like
home.
Ice cream.
Yeah. I brought you something,
ice
Camille.
cream with sprinkles.
Oh, gross. So here's my question, Scott. That picture I saw was like you could see like there was a definite serious look in these guys' faces. I'm guessing you took that picture. They have their camera equipment and they're not like scared running, but they're serious because there's a bear behind them. And I'm guessing
it would get serious.
That wasn't exactly by design. That wasn't exactly by design there.
No, I mean, you're watching the bears in the river. You're sitting down on the riverbank. You got all your camera gear out there. You're shooting, and you're always ready to just get up and leave at a moment's notice. Because what surprised me was how fast bears walk. And just a stroll, they cover a lot of damn ground real quick. But the problem was they'd be feeding out in the river right in front of you, and then that particular bear had caught enough salmon. I guess he needed a break, and he's bringing one up to the bank. And he's bringing it right where we were sitting. Yeah. And that's a 1,000-pound grizzly bear walking to you with a salmon going to have dinner right where you've parked. So it was time to get up and go. You know, what you can't see in the picture is the guide that we're with is between the last guy and the bear. And he's standing there with his bear spray walking backwards, walking along, keeping an eye on the bear. But there's rangers everywhere, and they're on your ass all the time about keeping that 50 yards. And one thing I did learn is most of them don't know what 50 yards is because they'd start fussing at you at about 100. And me being a bow hunter, I kind of know what 50 yards is. But I was taking pictures of a bear he was on the beach on the lake, and he had gone up there and messed around and then laid down and went to sleep. And it was cool. It was just a cool shot. It was laying facing the water, sleeping next to a log. And so I laid down on the beach with the bear so I could get eye-level pictures, down low. It turned out really cool shots. I was about 75 yards away, something like that. And this bear is just snoozing, man. And one of the rangers comes up, "You need to move. You need to move. You need to move. You're too close to the bear. You're too close." I ain't too close to the damn bear. And they all carry around these little and the bear's snoozing, man. He is out, and they don't care one bit about you. And she had her little rangefinder. I said, "I'm gonna say that's 7 yards." And she looked at me and she says, "No, you're inside 50 yards." I said, "Look at your little rangefinder." She pulled it up. It was 66 yards. So
that's
take that.
That's the same
thing.
You don't mess with Santa on distances. The last dude
Santa knows just how far it is from house to house. You don't mess with him on their distances.
I want to get to some more, but Caleb, what was your big adventure today? Anything like bears lying in the stream with a bear?
Man, I tell you what. No, I dealt with V-bottom Louisiana guides, There's a lot of them. I posted that picture. Oh, I posted that picture yesterday. Put down 103 miles, and that was proving up one singular marsh. And I don't think it's a tournament winner, but I think it's enough to at least give us a hard fight for day 3 to possibly go into day 4, which is the final day. And today, Louisiana puts out a notice that they are closing that marsh on September 22nd through January 31st, 2023.
Oh,
So,
no.
and then the other marsh I've been in, the private landowners have been running people out of today. So we're kind of starting all over here.
Jeez. It's that weekend, right? It's this coming weekend?
It starts next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
So we fish Wednesday and Thursday, and for a total of 5 fish over 2 days. After that's over, the top half of the field goes on. The bottom half is done. They'll zero out the scales. You fish Friday for 4
I like
fish.
that.
The top 10 from the 4 fish day go to Saturday. They zero out the scales. You catch 5. That's championship day.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's
so
a
what
good
is
proving ground, though.
what's the rationale on closing out a marsh? I mean, what's the why would they?
Dean, you'll be driving around a marsh over here, and I kid you not, I went into a complex. While I was in there fishing it, a track hose showed up, scooped up a bunch of mud, and closed my way out of the complex. They just do that over here. I guess erosion. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's their reasoning for closing the marsh is they want to work on the levees and whatever. I mean, maybe get the Buick out of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at right now. Is
so you're scouting and starting all over again.
It's starting all over again. Yeah, I might have to put the hammer down on the Simmons and become a Texan for a couple hours a day or something. I don't know yet, but
oh wow,
it's tough.
Wow.
It's tough over here for everybody, though. It's tough for every single one of us. Fun fact: I am closer to Matagorda than I am to where we caught fish in Louisiana for the last tournament. Did the math on that.
Damn. Oh wow. Well, maybe Matagorda's in your future. I ain't saying anything. I'm not
saying it's not, man.
Exactly.
But here's the thing.
Scott, go ahead, Caleb.
I got one more thing, and then I'm gonna get off of here because I got stuff to do. Or actually, 2 things. Keith Bill commented on the Facebook post yesterday that I guess he looked at my average speeds and did some nerd math stuff that I can't do. But he said it looks like you drove around for 5 hours and fished for 2. And yeah, welcome to tournament fishing. That's how this works. 2, I have caught probably 30 to 50 fish a day every day I've been over here, and can't have fun doing it because they're not the right ones. So if you want to get into tournament fishing, be prepared to have these kind of problems.
Before we let you go, that is a topic for later. So let me get your thoughts on that right now. Are we sure that tournaments are fun? That's how I put it on the doc, because you look like you've just been like beat down these last few days, and you're catching fish after fish after fish.
Oh, it's great fishing. My golly, I can't tell you how many, but between 6 to 12 pound fish, I'm physically sore from catching them. But tournaments are fun, and Scott and Dean can attest to this. They're fun kind of at the captain's meeting. They're fun at the weigh-in if you didn't completely suck. And they're kind of fun at camp at night from about 4 until 7, because from 4 to 7 you get hammered and then go to sleep. And that's pretty much the fun part of tournament fishing.
I'm telling you. Any parting thoughts here? Because I want to get back to. We haven't even gotten to Dean yet. This is going to be a fun episode. We're about almost 20 minutes in already. Parting thoughts on from you, Caleb, because I know you got to get going. Good luck, by the way. I'm sure we'll talk to you next week.
I would like to see comments on Facebook about whether or not we think Scott's using product in his beard yet or not.
I can tell you product. I can tell you right now that is too slick looking. That is too nice.
There's been some. He's got some special horsehair brushes. He's probably got some oil that smells kind of funny.
He's probably got some of them little glitter beads in there.
Yeah. He goes, "Hey, I wonder if that stuff will make my beard shine too."
Yeah, maybe.
All right,
Look how
Caleb.
shiny
So
that bear ass is.
I'm not sure about next Tuesday because that's the day before your tournament begins.
I think
but
I legally can't fish next Tuesday. So
okay,
as long
you're
as
in
I
then.
can,
Yeah.
well, as long as I don't have to leave at a certain point for the captain's meeting, yeah, because I can't. Well, I think no, I don't think I'm even allowed to fish next Tuesday. I'm not sure.
Good.
But yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see you next Tuesday. I'm glad you could check in, man.
All right, buddy. See ya.
All right, let's get back to Scott here, and then Dean. I know you got questions too. It's not like I feel bad because I haven't gotten to your stuff yet, Dean, and it seems like it was a great adventure, but you've got questions for him too. One more question from me, Scott, on these bears and your pictures and everything you did up there. Well, two, did you do any fishing? Number one, but more importantly, I was looking at these pictures and I'm like, there has to be some sense of these bears have been a little bit, what's the term? Americanized,
Domesticated.
Domesticated. Have they been at all domesticated?
No, they're not
They,
domesticated one bit.
But
Not
they know people are there, right? I mean, they're.
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering how
they're
accustomed.
They are used to people being around them, but you get the hell out of their way, and they're not. They are not intimidated by you in any way or form. Yeah. They're just doing bear things, and you just.
And it's still a grizzly bear. He's still.
Of course, he could give you a love pat and kill you. I mean,
yeah.
Like, hey, you look cute. Oh, well, now I'm dead. No.
Yeah. I mean,
you're shredded.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking at a bear, and it'll be a female with a couple cubs or something, and you're watching them, and you're like, man, that's a big bear. And then all of a sudden, around the corner comes a big. And you go, oh, that's a big bear.
No, that
is a big bear. That's the only time it would get a little uncomfortable.
Unnerving. Yeah.
Would be. It wasn't so much us with the female with the cubs. We just stayed out of their way and let them do their thing. And you don't get between mama and the cubs, and you just back up if they start coming your way. But when a big male would start, the females would get very nervous and protective of the cubs, and you could sense the tension in the air because the males will kill the cubs. They've had that happen out there. And there was. Somebody asked if there was any bear fights. There was some growling. There was some fussing, occasionally. But for the most part, they just move out of the way when the bigger bear comes through. Even the bears move. And there's so much food that they're pretty well spaced out. And the coolest part was watching them chase. And those were the best photos I got, were of the chases in the shallow water.
Trying to get to the fish.
Yeah. And you talk about wild looking. They say they can run 35 miles an hour, and I believe it. I mean, they're standing still, sitting and watching, and their heads going back and forth. They're watching the fish go by, and all of a sudden they zero in on one, and you can see it it's like a dog, like a retriever, and they just get, just totally focused, and then their head goes down, their shoulders come up, and they launch, and that launch is just amazing. It's something everybody needs to go see it.
You got me hooked.
You got to go see it.
Yeah.
It is.
Did you fish?
And like I said, one of the most incredible things I've ever sat and watched. It was really, really cool to see all the bears just doing their thing. Just doing what bears do. The funniest part though was once they get through eating, they walk off in the woods and they just lay down. Just wherever the hell they lay down. We had to divert on a trail that we were walking because we walked into the river. It was fine. We walked out of the river 5 minutes later, and there's a bear laying across the pathway.
Well,
he sounded
let him sleep. Yeah, I would let him sleep.
And that's the same way I do after a fish dinner.
You're dang right.
Yeah,
you're dang right. But did you fish? Did you fish any, Scott? Did you get any fishing in?
No, man. Yeah. I had a 60-pound weight limit.
Yeah.
All my gear, all my cameras, clothing, everything had to be under 60 pounds to get on the plane, on the float plane. So really didn't have a whole lot of room. And I mean, we were literally hiking and shooting all day long,
Yeah.
every day. If
Yeah.
we were on it, so there wasn't a
Well,
whole lot of downtime. But
that's
I
pretty. That's
would
pretty
go
cool.
back again tomorrow.
Well,
In fact,
you
there
got
was
me
another
interested.
group. There was another group coming in after us, and one of the guys got COVID and couldn't come, so there was a spot open. And I was trying my best to figure out how in the hell I could stay another 4 days with the next group, but there wasn't any way to call the airline or call Camille and tell her, "Hey, I didn't get eaten. I'm just going to stay." It just couldn't work it out to make it where it would work where I could extra trip. But I would have stayed. I just stayed 2 weeks. I mean, it was just a blast. The weather was cold. It was 38 to I think 50, give or take, and mist and rain off and on the whole time. But it was a good break from this 100 degrees. But it was a little
I
chilly.
guess so.
Kind of
I
cold.
guess so. All right, Dean. So Nicaragua, man, just getting into that place.
It
And
was
trust me,
interesting, man.
yeah,
It was,
everybody listening here, we're gonna wrap this around some fishing topics here, but yeah, just getting into that place, it sounded like you were having a hard time just getting in.
man, for the first time to do that kind of traveling, it was a little apprehensive. Coming out across the border, once you understand the procedures, it was way more comfortable. But the way my son said it, he said there's a difference between taking a vacation and traveling. And this was very much traveling. It was just a totally different experience, with a lot of extracurricular mixed in. But yeah, flew into Costa Rica, took a taxi to the border. And for whatever reason, cars don't drive across the border. You get a ride, you get out, you go through a couple of checkpoints. They check all your paperwork. You pay random $1 here to somebody, $5 to the next dude, $3 to the next
I
dude.
wonder why.
Just depends on who's there that day.
La mordida.
And then you make it up to the immigration station, and then of course it's all Spanish, man, and I speak zero Spanish, and so you kind of figure it out as you go along. But Nicaragua it's very third world. I mean, the people, once you get in there, is amazing. The culture is, I mean, I'm still on just a natural buzz. I got home last night, and it's just really kind of a crazy experience to be there in the morning and be back here in the evening,
Yeah.
and realize what a different world that those people live in every day. But we did some traveling in the back roads. I mean, we went, visited a couple of different little communities along the way. I don't know if you call them villages or whatever you want to call them, but so my older son lives there. He's actually there now. That's how I ended up in Nicaragua. We went to visit him, and he is very much immersed in the culture. He loves to travel the back roads, go to places that you would never end up there without somebody leading the way.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I mean, it was amazing. I have so many stories about the things I saw. We did 2 days of fishing where we found some guys with a panga. So most of the world travels to that coast of Nicaragua for the surf. It's world-class surfing. I met surfers from all over the world. That is what attracts very adventurous souls to that part of the world.
And attracted your son.
And we could do a whole show on my son's stories of where he's gone around the world. He has some other friends that he knows that actually that lived down there. So that's how he ended up there visiting those people. And he's been there for almost a year now. He's living there. He's planning on buying some property. I mean, he actually wants to spend some time there. But the people that travel there are very unique individuals. They have a sense of adventure that drives you to the next level. When we were planning this trip, lot of apprehension about it. You know, he told me about the border crossings, and, you know, occasionally you have to bribe a policeman for just some random reason. And I was like, man, dude, this is crazy. But it's not as scary as it is. After being there, I can't wait to get back. I mean, we explored. I was there for 8 days, and we had a crazy amount of time to see a lot of different things. And when I got to that 8th day, I was like, man, I can't wait to get back to this place. There was just so much to do. But we spent the 2 days that we went fishing, just from talking to some people. They told us about this, you know, village down the road where they launched the pangas off the surf. And if people saw the pictures and the videos, it's on the page. I still have some more that I got to dig through and post up some cool stuff. But I mean, you roll the boat on logs to the water, and they roll the engine down the beach on a little cart. They strap it up, push the boat into the water, and the surf that we're breaking through is not small. I mean, to get through the breakers, it's it's a pretty exciting thing. I mean, you sit down, you hold on, because you're going to crash through 3 sets of waves getting out to the ocean. But once you're out there, we caught tuna, mahi. I caught a sailfish. The ocean, the Pacific Ocean in that part of the world, is a sight that everybody should see sometime in their life. The color of that ocean is just amazing. The fish. And so another interesting thing. So I've been to Costa Rica, and I've fished down there many times. It is congested with people. The places that we were was desolate. It was devoid of humans. It was the most pristine shoreline, beaches, flora and fauna, just untouched. It's the way planet Earth is supposed to look, or how it's just, you know, for millennia, it has not changed. It was breathtaking. It was amazing. Every time you turn around, you're just in awe of what you see. There's monkeys in the yard, parrots. It never ended for the things that we were seeing.
So tell me about the fishing, though. Well, you caught a sailfish. I saw that. You just mentioned that. And tuna. I mean, that had to be like, you obviously you weren't real far off, or were you? And how did that play out?
So when we launched from the beach, we went out. We probably put the lines in the water within the first mile. They just go straight out into the ocean. And what we were doing was trolling, like skirts, little skirted topwater. They hook mahi, tuna, and sailfish. It's skipping on the surface. So we dropped our lines in the water about 1 mile out, and within the first 2 miles we hooked mahi, tuna. Like immediately we were getting some amazing hookups. And then we landed those fish, took pictures. I mean, I don't want to skip over that too fast. The tuna and the mahi are amazing. When the mahi hit, they just don't want to be in the water. And these were some decent sized fish, none of the big bulls, but they weren't like these little chicken dolphin that we catch over here in the Gulf. They were crazy fun fish to catch. But there's flying fish, there's birds, there's schools of sardines. We saw whales while we were out there. We saw humpback whales that are migrating down the coast. But we went, in the morning it was a 4-hour trip each day. And within the first hour, we hooked some great fish. And then we went through a spell about an hour. We just couldn't get a bite. And then as we were kind of turning to come back in, boom, hooked a sailfish. And these are, you're holding the rod. So these guys are not professional sport fishermen. They fish to live. I mean, they fish to eat that day. Another service that they provide is they take surfers to these breaks that have zero access. So the surfers will come down there. They put their boards in the panga. The panga takes them down the shoreline. They throw the board out, jump in the ocean, and surf. And you talk about an adventurous soul there.
Yeah.
The panga takes off, and these dudes are out there just paddling around, catch a wave, come back, and a couple hours later, here comes the Uber and picks them up in the ocean, and they climb back in and go do their thing. And so these dudes, they're not rigging up these spreads like you would think, and trolling for these fish. You put your lure out and you're holding the rod. So I'm on one side of the boat with my rod, Junior's on one side, and Nico was in the middle. So we're just dragging 3 lines. And when those fish hit, it's not the boat catching the fish. I mean, you get to feel
it has to be you.
The brunt force of the strike. And it was so cool. Hooked a sailfish, brought that one in, great video, pictures. And we had so much fun. I told those dudes, I was like, man, what are y'all doing tomorrow? And so we went and did it. And the second day we didn't get the sailfish hookup, but we did get tuna. And then, of course, you go to the house, you're slicing up some fresh tuna, you're having sashimi under the coconut trees, looking at the monkeys and the parrots, drinking rum, pineapple. And every day, man, we cut open coconuts. So we get a big old pile of coconuts. You go out there with the machete, chop the coconut, boom, drink the juice, chop it open, scoop the coconut out with a spoon. And that's pretty much how we lived for the whole week.
Well, that's called living, man.
It is.
That's called living.
That is that's another interesting perspective of that. It's a very simple life. I was complimenting the dude on the boat. I was like, just what an amazing place this is that you live. And he kind of played it down a little bit. He's like, it's a very simple life, but we have everything we need. But it is, everyone in their life should go out and enjoy another culture and really see what is outside of our world here.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's the perfect transition to what I was going to ask both you guys again. And Scott, I'll start with you. People get intimidated by something that's not their norm, whether it's going to Alaska, and you've traveled as well, like to South America and Belize and all that, like Dean has. But like, if you can, and this is where it kind of ties in, and we're getting into the fishing topics now. Like, if you can get over being intimidated by something that's not your norm, I mean, it's unbelievable the fishing and adventurous experiences that you can have.
Yeah, and there's a whole world out there. The hard part is, to me, right now, I'm sitting there thinking that's still going on. Those bears are still there. Those guys are still going out fishing in Nicaragua. The things that are going on in the world outside of where we are, just keeps right on trucking, man. It's all this. We get to go visit it and see it for a very short period of time, and then you have to remind yourself that it wasn't just while you were there. That's day in, day out. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
That's always the hard part for me, is to look at that and go, it just keeps trucking along.
It's like they're not putting on a show for you. I mean, it's there. That's what happens.
No.
Kind of the same thing as like when you've got a good friend, you watched them, they had the kids and y'all were friends, and then you kind of went different directions, and then you meet up 10, 15 years later, 20 years later, and the kids are grown. They're supposed to still be little kids. That's the way I left them. Things shouldn't change while I wasn't watching. I had that yesterday with the Hal that I took out, Hal Kennedy. He sat behind me in the homicide office, and his son called me up and said, "Hey man, I want to take my dad out and let's go fishing, go play with tarpon." I was like, "Yeah, cool." And I remember Justin, his dad, bringing him around the office when he was like 12. And, and now he's been on the Houston Police Department for like almost 20 years.
The son has.
Yeah. The son's been on the department. So
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And
Dean,
the other thing that's kind of the message here is, and I put this on there, and I asked, I was talking to you guys about it before. Like, you can kind of learn and at least get some perspective when you fish in other places. I've mentioned here that I've loved to go fishing in foreign countries because I've been able to travel a lot. But it's not like you're going to do that. But you can kind of get a good perspective on how they do things there. Now, I know you don't want to do things exactly like they're doing in Nicaragua, but you've traveled to Costa Rica and other places. Doesn't it give you perspective and kind of help you kind of refine your craft, for lack of a better way to put it?
I think it gives it gives me, I don't know if it's actual techniques and stuff, but it just it fuels my motivation to come back here and fish at that level. It's so different, but these guys, they dedicate their life. And in Costa Rica, I mean, when we go fish with those guys down there, they are into their craft. It is amazing that they all night, the night before, they're planning their trip. In the morning, they're rigging, they're getting ready. And then they fish all day. And then they come in and then they take care of that catch. And then as soon as they're done, they're cleaning that boat and they're preparing it for the next day. And when I hang around people that perform at that level, when I come back here, it just it helps me just step up the game. It's not so much as techniques, it's more of an attitude that comes with meeting other people with that kind of dedication.
What about you, Scott? You've been all over the place. How does it affect you, and what our listeners can kind of get out of that?
I've picked up some techniques from different places. Fishing in Belize, learned a lot about fly fishing down there, and just they had a different way of presenting a fly to a fish, and it worked. And so when I'm having a tough day, sometimes I'll switch over and try something I learned from somewhere else. But it goes both ways, though. I've also taught people in other places. I was over in the Carolinas fishing, and they didn't believe that trout hit topwaters. They were throwing plugs and soft plastics, and it was like, nah, you're not gonna catch anything on topwater, and then pulled in a 25-inch trout. So different areas get different ideas, and you kind of get stuck in your ways, and it's kind of cool to go somewhere else and see how everybody else does it. It might give you a new idea on something to solve a problem, when you're not catching fish.
And I know, Dean, you probably had the itch to get back, and that's one of the things we wanted to talk about as well here in a second. So, Dean, you were talking earlier, you've been out. You were there 8 days, and all of a sudden, you got a business to run here, and you're going to be out on the water tomorrow, and I'm guessing Thursday and Friday, et cetera, et cetera. So you're kind of relating to the me's of the world that goes 2 or 3 days in a row, and then you're home for 5-6 days or whatever it is. What has that been like, and how do you approach it now?
Well,
all of a sudden, your weekday challenge, Dean. Your weekday challenge.
No, that's easy. You just go on Facebook and look at the pictures of what everybody's been doing, and you go follow that guy. You go follow that dude. No, man, you just it's like a lot of the stuff that we talk about. As soon as I came home, I looked at the tide and the wind. What am I going to be facing for the next 5 days? Water temperatures. You just analyze the basic data. With me, most importantly, it's the tide levels, because that dictates where I'm going to be able to fish. Always pushing the limits, going to the shallowest water, the shallowest flat that I can find. So I've already started, looking at the tides. What am I going to expect this week? Where is the moon at? How is the moon going to affect that? And then there's a lot of leg work that takes off for the next 3 days. When you've been fishing 30 days in a row, you don't have to analyze that data so much. You have a better expectation. But the same stuff that we talk about, you look at it and you plan where you're going to go. And I think it's one of those deals too, where we talk about, you're going to fall back on your favorites. You're going to fall back on your go-to spots. And then you start working from there.
Scott, you were on some tarpon all of a sudden. Well, I think you were on some tarpon based on the text I got from you, but it might have been a little bit of a frustrating experience.
Yeah, the tarpon. When I came back, I wasn't sure, where I was going to go or what I was going to do. I just said, well, hell, I'll just do what I normally do, and we'll see what happens. And the tarpon were right where I left them, which is unusual for tarpon.
Yeah.
But there was a bunch of fish right in the exact same place where I caught fish, 3 days before I left. And so it was cool to see them still there. Then we moved around a bit. Those fish wouldn't eat. I don't know what their deal was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had bait fish above them, and then I was looking on my depth finder, and you could see the tarpon underneath the bait fish, but they were separated by like 5 feet. And I don't know what was going on, but they weren't eating.
Yeah.
And we drug lures through them for probably 3 hours and got one or two.
No
bumps.
hookups at all?
We got a couple of bumps, but I don't know if we were hitting the fish or if they were actually eating it. But, we were right in them. And then we just changed locations, went for some different fish, and found some that were eating. And we got one good hookup, and my buddy Hal, it jumped for him, and he kept a tight line instead of bowing to the king like you're supposed to.
Yeah.
And when you keep a tight line, sometimes they land on top of it and break you off.
Yep.
Guess what happened? The hell of it is that man has caught marlin. He owned big sport fish boats, black men, all kinds of stuff. He's fished all over the world, caught all kind of big fish, fished Hawaii. Yeah. All that. He's never hooked a tarpon in all that fishing he's done. And so he hooked his first tarpon with me and managed to lose it. We got it on for a minute or two, but we got some bites, but they weren't good, solid, eats where they were just, where you felt like the fish were really feeding. I think we just kind of made them mad occasionally or something, or they got curious, but they never really took it all that well. And it was kind of frustrating, but it's tarpon fishing. That's what happens.
By the way, a couple of little things here. Scott, I'm guessing those photos that you took, and I should have said this earlier, and I just remembered, are going to be on scottnollphotography.com, right? Do you have any timetable on that?
Man, eventually. I got
that's the timetable. Eventually is the timetable.
Well, I'm still building this house, and I got stuff to finish up on that. But also, I think I'm fishing 17 of 21 days, 18 or 21 days, something like that. And so, I had to come back and make some money to pay for that trip. But
I guess.
So,
I guess.
Anyway, it'll be a little while. I got to go through. I had over 3,000 photos I took. So,
you need to give us another couple of teases. Those are some good looking pictures.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. I mean, each picture, once you decide, hey, that's a good one, then you go through the editing process and you play with it a little bit. And there's some little things you need to do to one, because I shoot raw instead of JPEG, which that's probably speaking French to you, but.
No, I do. I know what that is. Maybe Dean doesn't, but I know what that is.
I've heard of it. Well, raw is that sashimi we ate.
Yeah, or WWE wrestling.
Yeah. Anyway, there's things that you have to do to a photo before you can publish it, and I got to get some of that stuff done. That just takes time, and then Camille will put them on the website, and then they will be available. My plan is to have them there so that they'll make good Christmas gifts. I already got some people bugging me about, hey man, I want that particular photo. And I think I've only posted like 3 of them out of the 3,000. So.
Oh, okay. And then Dean,
there's some good stuff in there.
Dean, you mentioned while you were gone, your lovely better half sent me a text about perhaps going to Costa Rica. So don't be surprised if you see a familiar face when you guys are in Costa Rica. You mentioned that earlier in January. We're just trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out if we want to be here for the birth of our second grandchild, perhaps, or go to Costa Rica. And we're leaning Costa Rica. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, we're looking at, for planning purposes, we're looking at April now.
That's even better because I'm going to tell her that because our second grandbaby is due. And I know some of our listeners don't care about this, but that's all right. We'll get back to the fishing here. Redfish Advanced Redfish School in just a second. Our second grandbaby is due February 6th. And so you were talking about like the second or third week of January, and we're like, what if it's early? What if it's early? I don't know if we
And
should.
so Carrie's
I don't
Carrie
know if we'll
has
ever be forgiven.
Carrie has a grandchild coming in early March.
Okay.
So it was going to be before or after that grandbaby. So,
Yeah.
and so, yeah. And then April is kind of the off season where there's not nearly as many people. And so, yeah, we've done very well down there in April.
All right. Well, there you go. You might see us a better chance of seeing us down there.
No, that'd be awesome.
All right. It would be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. I've never been there. All right. So we did this last week. I don't know if you guys heard any of the podcast. I know you were really busy. I'll forgive you, you and Scott. But we had what we called, and had a really good response, advanced trout school, because Captain Pat Gardner joined us, and he's just such a great trout fisherman. Obviously, Caleb has had such a great experience as well. So we really went into like the nitty gritty of catching trout, wade fishing, whatever else, from two of the best. And I thought, and we might break this up, one part this week and then one part next. I said, well, okay, that had such a good response. I know people are out there thinking, well, what about redfish? Advanced redfish school. And what I'm getting at here is like, not just like, hey, we're going to drift and maybe catch a fish, but like subtleties of redfish in different environments. And Dean, I'm going to start with you, like what you really have to really rely on. And I didn't mean to be redundant there. Shallow versus deep versus beachfront versus bayous versus drains versus back lakes. Like, I'll throw a scenario out there for that our listeners are often in, and you tell me, and then I'll bounce it back and forth and ask Scott the next question. So you both aren't answering the same question, but give us like some subtleties, some key things. I'm going to start with you in shallow, because that's your cup of tea. That's your wheelhouse. Shallow water red fishing, not necessarily sight fishing, but what are your like one or two? Not everybody thinks of this necessarily, but it works for me.
Well, I mean, it's about finding the fish first of all. And so if you want to think about, the challenges of that, it kind of comes with the seasons and how they react during the seasons. And I'm always entertained, intrigued with comparing what the guys up around Galveston and Freeport and around the marshy areas are doing, how that compares to what we do down here on the flats. Rarely does it coincide. So it's there's a lot of factors depending on where you're at. But on our shallow flats, what we'll have is during the summer or the warmer months, you're going to find fish scattered out. They're going to be very widely dispersed. You're going to fish in a lot of areas. You're going to cover a lot of area to get your fish. As we start getting into the fall right now, the fish start to school up. They start to congregate in mass in certain areas, and they'll still be widely scattered in others, but there's certain types of terrain and such that will attract schools of redfish. And whenever you're dreaming of that day where you're going to go out and get 100 reds on one of those days where you're just wearing them out, that's kind of what you're focusing on, those types of areas. And it's the flats down here are not really it's not as complicated, or it's not as diverse as the upper coast. We don't have creeks and marshes, and then some days you're going to be out in the open bay. It's just it's flats. But though it relates to the passes and places where water flows, where there's current, and the places that the wind generates current, is where you're going to focus your attention, looking for those big schools of fish in the fall and the winter.
Scott, I know I'm going to go to you on the subtleties or some of the key things that maybe not everybody thinks about when you're in a little deeper water, and maybe schooling. He touched on schooling in the flats, but the schooling in deeper water can get pretty technical as well, as we've talked about occasionally in the past, how you want to approach them, et cetera.
going through the seasons, just knowing on the upper coast and the marshier areas and stuff like that, it matters more to know what they're eating in the different seasons. There's a period where they're on finger mullet. There's a period where they're on shrimp. Redfish will eat anything. If it doesn't eat them, they'll eat it. But I mean, I found mice inside of them. I found snakes. I found all kinds of stuff in them. But there's always a key source, and if you can work your way through knowing the different seasons and when they're going to key in on a certain type of bait, then you're way ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. What about go ahead.
We don't have like the shrimp that hatch out like we do in the marsh.
In this marsh, and
yeah,
that shrimp's the right size.
And me and Scott have compared these notes over the years.
Right.
I mean, whenever I see that going off up north, I call him up and ask him, it's like, man, what is the deal with those shrimp? And, they have periods during the year where they just spawn like crazy and the redfish are feasting on those shrimp. And I mean, they are focused on those shrimp. The birds are on them. And it's just an interesting aspect that is totally different from what we see on the lower coast.
Well, on the lower coast right now, shrimp, I'm guessing, are getting bigger too. So that might affect some of the bite as well, right, Dean?
Yeah. It's just a different environment for shrimp. We don't have sloughs and marshes in these back corners that they're going to come flowing out of at any specific time. They're widely dispersed over the grass beds. They're in the channels, and we just don't have the variety of terrain on our grass flats as there are in the marshes.
Scott, I feel like we missed out. We were kind of we lost the signal there for a second. We missed out on a key element you were talking about with the deeper schooling fish. You and I have had on-air, off-air discussions about schooling fish and how to approach them. And to me, that's one of, if you want to talk about advanced redfish school, that's one of the key elements of how you approach a school where you don't just pick off one. What would be your points on that?
Mostly get ahead of the school. I see way too many people running at the school. They get on a trolling motor, or they're poling, and they're chasing the fish. And anything in nature that gets chased gets nervous. And redfish are no different. If they feel that pressure weight coming from behind them and you're pushing or coming from the side of them, they tend to disperse or quit feeding. If you can get ahead of them and set up in front of them and let them come to you, you'll do much better. And then pick them off from the outsides. There's always, for my polling platform, I get to see it. There's always these little small satellite schools around the big school. And if you can cast off of the main school to the sides and pick those fish off first before you blow up the main school, they all still want to stay together. That's why they're schooling. And if you can pull those fish off without disturbing the main school, sometimes you can get 4, 5, 6 fish before school blows up.
Yeah.
And
the other thing is
the best way to describe that is be patient. If you can control your emotions long enough to watch that school for a minute or two, because there's a lot of times as we're running out in the morning and I'm going to set up a drift, we'll kick up a school of fish, and the people that are riding in the front of the boat, they plainly see that. They're like, hey. And I'm like, I see it. Yes, we're going to go around and come back into those fish. And yes, you pick them off on the corners and the edges, and then you get a second shot at that school and a third shot and a fourth shot at those. But you have to be patient. But it is an exercise in self-control some days. And I'm not always good at that.
Neither have I. Go ahead, Scott.
Nobody is.
No, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, your urge is always to just throw right into those fish.
If you can also, one other thing too, to crank down your drag a little bit. and don't play the fish quite the way that you would normally play it. Just crank down your drag, and you can pull the fish out of the school faster. That way they don't turn around and run back into the school on light drag. That
Yeah,
blows
messed
up more
everything
schools
up.
than pretty
Yeah.
much anything. Yeah.
Yeah, no question. All right. What would Scott do? What would Dean do? This is going to be a good test. And by the way, I'm listening very, very carefully, Dean. I'm going to be down there a few days here in the next couple of days. So we'll start with Scott. I know you ran out on the beachfront. You were looking for your tarpon, but the weather. I looked at it this morning. I don't know how much it's changed. Looks like it might be a little breezy, but nothing too scary out there, Scott.
No, it's right on the edge. I've been talking to my people that are coming, and if it blows a little more than predicted, then we're going to be blown out. If it blows a little less, we're going to be in good shape. If it follows exactly, which it doesn't. It never follows the exact forecast. But if it was exact forecast, we'd be right on the edge of being a little bit too bumpy to be out there. But with that big 26-foot freedom I was sitting in a minute ago, I don't have to worry about comfort. It's more about being able to find the fish with the little wind chop out there. The bays, I haven't really heard a whole lot of reports on the bays since I got back, other than some schooling redfish action, up in the shallows. That seems to be starting. We had a little bit of a cool down. Our water temperatures got back down into the 80s from the 90s, and
that's something.
That's going to help. I think I saw 81, 82 the other day, which really kind of surprised me after we had that little rain. We had 2.5, 3 inches of rain down here over the weekend. So that helped cool things off quite a bit. So that should be the kickoff for our fall fishing. That should get them headed in the right direction at least. And so I would look for some more schooling, and trout's still going to be on the drop offs. I don't think they're going to get up there real shallow just yet, but it's coming. That should be happening soon.
Dean, water temps, and it looks like a good, decent as of now. Southeast wind Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Good drifting wind. And I get excited every day, but man, this is the time of year where you just have anticipation every time you leave the dock where, what are we going to find today? Perfect wind for drifting, for covering area. The trips I have this week, or most of them, are drifting in the boat. So we'll see a lot of territory. Decent tide. It's running kind of medium. So, we won't be up on the shallowest flats, like back in the corners and such, but it just pushes you out to the next level, to the next range. And also we're getting at that time of year where the crowds are really light on the water.
Right, baby.
On weekdays, you absolutely own the place, but people are starting to think about deer season and dove season and a lot of the other seasons. So there's just not a lot of competition for the spot. So, during the summer, you get that first shot, man. You get the first 2 hours of the morning are going to be to yourself. But now it's like you go to spot number 2 and 3 and 4, and there hasn't been anybody there. So it adds a lot of opportunity to your day. So, the temperatures are great. I mean, even in the mornings, I ain't saying it's cool, but there is
but you can feel it. No, you can feel it. I felt it.
Difference into the feel, and the fish feel it just like we do. The days are getting shorter, and it is time.
I mean, I'm not putting on any jackets, but you can definitely feel it, especially when you get out on the boat. I mean, that's for dang sure.
I might just wear a little undershirt, but
something like that.
That comes off pretty quick.
Yeah. All right, boys. Tell me if you got anything else going on. You both seem like you're going to be booked up pretty regularly. Any openings, Dean or Scott? Dean, start with you.
Yeah, there's sporadic days, but booking a lot of trips. It's a totally different clientele that waits for school to start. During the summer, I fish with all the families and the kids and such. And then, once we get to fall, it's a lot of, I just call them the older dudes, man. It's all the retired guys that wait for the crowds to go away. So we'll get a lot more fly fishermen in the fall, and just a different group that starts coming out. But sporadic days are plentiful, at the moment. But I am booking trips into November and December already. But, it's the time of year that the guys who get it, they're going to be here. It's really what you wait for all summer.
And Scott, I know you're going to be out looking for tarpon again, but how long are they going to be here, and when? And do you have any openings left? Think we lost him? We lost him.
Yeah, he needs to get away from that metal building. I think that's
we'll leave it at that. You can hit him.
It's affecting the plate in his head.
I try to quit booking. I kind of try to. Yep.
There you go. Go ahead. I'm gonna be editing today, boy.
be a lot of cuts.
I can hear y'all.
Go ahead, Scott.
You hear me? No, I'm pretty well booked up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We waited all that time for that.
I'm pretty well booked up.
All right, there we go. We'll let you go, Scott. Lost the signal there. At the end of
October.
End of October. I think I got that part. All right, boys. That's hilarious. Dean, I'm gonna see you this weekend. I'm gonna be down at that Freedom Boats tournament in a couple of days. I just don't want to embarrass myself because I'm gonna be with my two sons. But you guys have a great week. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being live here on the YouTube channel. Catch them up. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will talk to you next time.